Hello and welcome back to Faith and Honest Conversation. I'm Thomas Rowland, and this is James Found. Hi, James. We were just catching up and working out what we wanted to do with it, and got into some some meaty stuff that I thought, why are we not recording this? So we've started recording, and yeah, I guess. Just a few details to start off with what we're hoping to do here. And actually, I was thinking this really relates to what we were just saying, is we're trying to express our own experience with faith. And we're never trying to tell you what you should believe or think or feel, or your own experience should be. And I think in doing that, I certainly want to release you to feel how you do feel about your faith, in all its ambivalence and all the different facets, because I think it's so powerful, and there's also maybe a shadow, what I'd call a shadow side to it, that has its own power and can be really helpful, but only when we own it and can feel it. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're certainly not here to shame you and anything like that. And yeah, I guess going on, what we're hoping to do is, so we're pre-recording it much more, so you won't be able to interact with us live, but do leave comments, do send any questions that you'd like us to discuss. We'd love to hear from you. It's not happened yet. We would love to have people's questions, have people even to be interviewed, but I guess it can be quite it's quite a private thing, I think, isn't it, James? So it can be really hard to talk to just two random people about your faith. But if you'd like to do that, that would be really great. We'd love to have you, because we want this to be a place where we can express all those different experiences that aren't just our own, that are other people's, when it comes to this area. Go back to the
sets.
Bounded and
bounded. So
the sets,
it's just because I realised we didn't record this when I talked about.
Yeah, no, it's really great.
To the walls that we just brought up. So I was talking to somebody recently, and they were saying about, particularly with they were a Christian pastor, and they were talking about, like, quite frequently the church will see itself as a bounded set rather than a centered set, and a bounded set is either you're in or you're out. So you're defined by what you are, but what you're not. So, like, therefore, I am a Christian. I'm not a non-Christian, or something like that. And then you've got the centered set, which is so it's quite a black and white approach to it. The centered set is in relationship to. So you take a point, or you take a point of reference. In I suppose in our case, faith, or God, or spirituality, or Jesus, or whatever it is, there's like and it's your relationship, and therefore everybody else's relationship to that central point, or that point that you're picking. So, for example, you could pick like a house, like your house, and it's how far away is everybody else from your house. That's a centered set, as opposed to your city. Are you inside or outside of the city? If that kind of gives a bit of context. And I think that a bounded set makes us feel safe, removes us from suffering, and removes us from, therefore, kind of really getting intimate with faith. So we can have, like, the trappings of spirituality without really experiencing it, because there isn't any, visceral reality to it, because we're going, oh yeah, this is fine. Whereas, like, actually, whenever I talk about or feel, like, think about faith, I'm like, this isn't hugely comfortable. Sometimes it's amazing, but it's not usually hugely comfortable. Sometimes it's really peaceful, and I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. Went off on one there. Yeah, I think I was trying to shoehorn it in a little bit, but yeah, maybe it doesn't work.
No, I was thinking that. I mean, when you said it first, I thought, well, that's really helpful way of framing faith and religion and things, and I can see my own life and how I've tried to be in the bounds, and been so taken up with the walls, and yeah, and I was really struck when you just said about how the bounded set keeps us from suffering, like it's that.
Yeah, that felt about right, but I don't know if it's strictly straight.
Yeah, well, I mean, suffering's always going to get us, isn't it? This is the world we live in, and but I wonder. I think for me, there was this real fear of the suffering of being outside the camp.
Yeah,
like real fear of being the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
And that suffering. And so being preoccupied with the wall and making sure I was inside was what made everything okay, I guess.
Yeah, making sure that, okay, well, I'm still on the inside, I'm still this side of things. Yeah.
And then there was this kind of promise, like tacit promise, maybe not always said, sometimes said, but like, well, if you're inside the wall, you'll be okay somehow.
Yeah, that's it. This sort of sense of security there, and like,
like God's watching over you, you're part of his people.
Yeah, that's it. The saved, the chosen, the elect, whatever, all of these different
things. And which gets hard if something goes wrong. And you're like, am I on the other side of the wall? But then you've got the promise of heaven, so it's kind of like, okay, it'll be okay in the end.
Yeah. And it's very sort of like, when you say it's all okay until something goes wrong, which I think inevitably it does. Because I think, and particularly when you've got people involved, we're pretty hard work. I think, I think we're pretty hard going and lovable and frustrating in equal measures, and I think that's part of it, isn't it? That when we, and I suppose that's partly why, for me, I don't see myself ever being part of a faith community any longer, is just how different and how precious I feel my faith is, and how precious I want to hold somebody else's faith, that I want any community that I'm involved in to be as to be as equal as possible, and also as gentle as possible, that there is no obligation on either side to do anything, to be anything. We're just approaching each other openly, and then leaving openly. Like there is no like, oh, I kind of have to keep going with you, or like, oh, I feel like if you're going in this direction, maybe I ought to be going. So no. You do you, I do me, and that's fine. And it's amazing seeing your faith. It's amazing you being able to see part of my faith. Does that sort of make sense? Rather than like, whereas if I'm in a church or a community where it's sort of like there are certain tenets or laws or rules or guidelines or anything like that, and it all becomes then like, they start as tiny little picket fences, but they always grow. They always become massive walls, and it always becomes, and it does feel like it saps the life out of things. I don't know.
The image I got was back to these pearls of that people are trying that people are trying really hard not to trample on others' pearls, but also that they're holding them, and then they're going to give it back to you.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Really good way of looking at it. Because it's not a case of like being so tentative that we never do anything, but it's just being so gentle that we don't crush. That we're not with that we're giving reverence where it's due, and recognizing, you know, this thing you're sharing with me has been created through pain, and as you know, there is suffering in the making of this. So yeah.
I'm just thinking like how much I saw something at the weekend where somebody came up and gave a testimony, and it was this kind of like, I was down and out, I was real real place of struggle, suffering,
Yeah, yeah,
and how X, Y, or Z, because of this church and what they were doing, meant I was great, and now I'm doing this, one, and that. And look at the life I have.
yeah.
And I don't like, I really, in the way I said that, I'm really aware that that's somebody's lives. And so let's preface this with, like, I see maybe that's your life, and that's wonderful. In as much as that's your experience. And at the same time, I couldn't help wondering, what if that's not actually your experience? What if you're just molding yourself to be?
That's it. And also, the impression I would get from there is like, so you come from a place of extreme suffering, and now do you not suffer anymore? Or like, is there like, you know, you're still human, so surely you will still experience suffering, you'll still experience heartache, pain, betrayal, probably, joy, and all of these other things. You haven't, it's not like it's a very crystalline way of looking at things. It's like bad then good, out then in, and it's like that's really scary to me, because all it does is it sets up for a fall.
It sets you up for falling back over the wall.
Right, exactly. And like exactly, because it shows like oh, I've crossed over a boundary. It's like, or are you just on a journey? Is it still, are you just, this is like a really good point, a good part of your path that is amazing.
And the image, what was coming to me as I was reflecting on that, and as you talked, was, I think it's true. I don't think I'm putting this on churches, some churches sometimes at least, but that we can, you know, people give churches their pearls, and churches can be like, yeah, I feel good about having all these pearls, I'm going to hold on to them. Or I might throw them away if they're not quite good enough.
And the judgment that's placed on them.
And it's like, so much I've got to offer you my pearls. I've got to be here, and they've got to be good enough, and I just,
to justify you being in.
To justify you being in, and then the church feels good because it's got all these pearls.
All these people with all these pearls.
And
that's a great way of looking at it.
And you know, the pearl of a testimony is great, isn't it? And it makes us feel good. And I just think, I don't know, I just like, so what I loved about what you were saying about churches, what you want in a spiritual community is this, how I phrase it, this giving back the pearl.
Giving it back.
This is your life, be free in it. You know, and I'd want to add to that, and it is my beliefs coming in, like, be what all God wants you to be, not how I think you should be, but, you know, become. And you're welcome here, whatever.
There's also like a case of when it's been given, and then somebody else or the church or the faith community's got that pearl. If it changes at all, it's like, is that still acceptable? Or how does that fit? So to use like the example, because again, it's something that I've had experience with, of somebody who's gone through say a drug or alcohol addiction, or has experienced substance misuse and stuff like that, and they come from a place of substance misuse, out of that, and there's like this, oh, I'm clean, and then they relapse, and it's like this pearl. Well, hang on a sec. There's this sort of like cyclical nature to addiction, where people do go through phases of being clean, or not using and not being dependent, and then go back into it. And not everybody does, and some people do break out of it for good, and that's amazing. And other people come back into it, and it's sort of, neither one is better or worse. I'm saying that knowing that being addicted to anything is not helpful, and it can be hugely destructive. But it's just that what I'm trying to say is that it's sort of, we can almost perpetrate relapse by trying to cement somebody's pearl in place, somebody's change. Oh, well, we've got to hold on to the change that's happened and not allow any other change to happen. And so somebody either stagnates where they are and inevitably will fall, or they'll, they're being a human being, they don't want to. They're like, well, hang on a sec, that's not my life, and then will fall again, because maybe that was inevitable, or maybe that's just part of their life story, and that was going to happen. I don't know.
But I was really interested how you said we can almost force the relapse.
Yeah.
And how, and it comes up again and again in kind of therapy thinking of like, the thing that we are trying to do to keep us safe is the thing that trips us up.
Yeah.
And I think, the more we make anything shameful, the more that thing is going to mess around in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives it power, doesn't it?
Yeah, like sex, which you mentioned earlier, is a prime example. Like, it's
exactly.
not been talked about a lot in my upbringing, and it becomes such a potent thing.
And potent, exactly. It becomes a potent thing that holds sway and can hold sway over your life. I think that's kind of a point that we touched on, my friend and I, when we were chatting earlier today, and he mentioned, about all of the sex scandals, particularly the child scandals throughout the church. And I was going to say Catholic Church, but it's like by no means exclusive. And because and also, like, the just abusive dynamics that crop up because there is this shameful, unspoken, unacknowledged sense of power and sense of being there that is just like left to run wild. And so no one knows how to talk about it, nobody knows how to approach it or address it, and as a result, anybody who is like feeling like they a little bit powerless in some respects, they might, that can become a temptation for them to express their power in that way. I think that's probably the kindest way I can put like somebody becoming really abusive effectively. And I'm just trying to recognize that even people who abuse are still people, even when the crimes are as heinous as that.
So we've just suddenly jumped from addiction to abuse, sexual abuse. And I just want to take a moment to think, okay, here we are. Here we've landed here. Okay.
We've got quite heavy, haven't we?
We've suddenly got very heavy. And and it's great. And, you know, the heavy stuff makes us, really pushes us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I also want to you know, like I was thinking when you're talking about addictions, that there are the really destructive addictions.
Yeah.
And yet I think everybody in that wall of, I can't do a circle on the screen, wall will be addicted to something, more than likely.
Absolutely,
You know,
yeah.
we're all addicted,
I
aren't we,
think
to
we all are, yeah. Having looked
whatever.
at addiction and explored it, I'm like, yeah, I would say pretty much everybody's got some sort of addiction somewhere along the line, something that's got a bit of an unhealthy sway over their lives, and given the right circumstances, would get super out of hand.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true about absolutely every person. And it's just some
And
a bit more destructive, as you say.
yeah. And the same is true, I think, with sex, that we all have these, I don't even know how to phrase the language here, but these things that we would be uncomfortable talking about, these experiences we'd be uncomfortable talking about, in whatever guise that is, or whatever level that is. Like, we all have those, and we just don't know how to talk about them. We just don't know how to be in relationship with those things.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes down to relationship, doesn't it? We don't know where we stand in respect to whatever this entity, or I guess creation of our own making, really, isn't it? And because it's there, we're like, oh, I don't know, I just gotta, the whole elephant in the room scenario, right? We just gotta skirt around it, pretend it's not there. But
and it becomes more than an elephant. It becomes like this monster, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that has such a sway, and that monster grows, I guess, as it's left.
I think so, and I think that if we shut it off and we don't look, I'm obviously speaking very metaphorically here, that we don't know how much of a reach and how much of an impact that does have, because you can't, because you're not looking, so you don't know what it's impacting and why. You might act out in this way or that way or the other, but might not realize that is because there's this huge thing that is unaddressed and you haven't looked at, and you need to go, oh, it's that, right, cool, okay, yeah. And now that I can see that, I can kind of go, well, it doesn't really need to affect this part of my life, and actually it doesn't really need to have an impact on that, and you can kind of contain it a little bit more, because it depowers the danger there. It's the unknown, I guess, that has such a sway over us.
Yeah. And I feel for me, it's also identifying that is a part of me that wants to be expressed, or maybe needs something, or is longing for something, or hoping for something. And it's not that it's necessarily wanting X, Y, or Z that I think it is, and I'm suddenly this bad person. It's wanting something very human and very normal.
It is very, very normal. It's like we want to experience and be, and there's parts of us that, because of the way that society's set up, or particularly because of the faith that we might have grown up with, that those subjects become taboo, and we just cannot address with them, and wouldn't know where or who to address them with. It's really challenging.
And I'm suddenly very aware, we've not put much language to this at all.
No, we're very much speaking in the abstract.
Very much speaking in the abstract.
Almost like we're skirting the issues.
It's almost like we're not talking about it.
We're not talking about it yet.
And welcome to Faith, an honest conversation.
We don't quite talk about what we mean. Where we really skirt those important issues. This is it, isn't it? It's like we almost have to. It's a real challenge, and I think it's the same when we look at counselling. That I know when I'm having my own therapy, like what I need to address, because it's right here, and I'm just doing this with it, and I'm going, yeah, I don't really want to talk to my counsellor about that. And then the good counsellor will go, so what is that thing that you're not telling me about right now? And I'm like, okay, it's this. And we get there straight away. Other times I'll leave it, and, you know, as a counsellor, you know, we'll leave it to the right at the end of the session. We're like, oh, so this is bothering me. Cool, bye.
Yeah. Drop.
Yeah, drop that. Run away. run away and leave. So with that, I think we should leave it till next session.
I think so. There's the drop. We're running.
But we could, that's where we could start with next week. And just the whole taboo subjects, the things we struggle to talk about. And I think particularly, to some extent, it's sex, to some extent, it's sexuality, to some extent, it's, I don't know, it's suffering, isn't it, to an extent. I don't know, there are probably 100 other things, but
it's all the shame we carry, isn't it?
Shame, yeah, it's a shame. Yeah.
I'm happy with that, mainly because I get to wait a week.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, James, as always. And yeah, thanks for joining us. And I hope you've enjoyed it as much, especially as I did the last 10 minutes. Yeah, take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.